What's going on, everybody? This is Randall Barnes, the founder of HBCU Pulse and the host of HBCU Pulse Radio, in the building for another special edition of the show on today, where it honestly feels like we done gone back in time to 2023 because the NFL draft happened and there was no HBCU player drafted after only one, Isaiah Bolden out of Jackson State, being drafted last year. So listen. Ariel is not here today, but filling in for Ariel, I have my guy, Kelly Flicks, HBCU sports analyst and contributor to the Laceup podcast network and HBCU Redzone, to break down all of our feelings about what happened with HBCU players in NFL draft. Flicks, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I mean, it could be better, but I'm doing great.
I'm honestly flabbergasted because I was telling you this before we started recording, that Ariel and I did an episode similar to what we are about to do last year. Now, granted, we did have an HBCU player that was drafted, and it was Isaiah Bolden. He went to the New England Patriots, and of course, we know he tragically got injured. He was out for the season, but he was going to do a lot of amazing things, kickoff returns, and just being the defensive back. We thought he was going to be our guy to say, hey, listen, look at this guy. That's why you need to draft HBCU players. And then you have Emmanuel Wilson that did so well with the Packers. But it just seems like no matter what we do, Marquise Bell with the Cowboys, Emmanuel Wilson with the Packers, it seems like people are not going to wake up to the fact that we have HBCU talent. So I just got to ask you this just to start out. So what is your reaction to seeing no HBCU players taken in this year's 2024 NFL draft?
Wow. I mean, simply wow. Last year, we were really close to this point. Everybody was thinking that it was going to happen, and the 7th round came around, and Isaiah Bolden got drafted, and everybody said, okay, thank you. We got one. This year, there's zero. I think the biggest difference between this year and last year, a lot of these guys this year did not test well, and it was kind of unfortunate to see it, but 2 or 3 months ago, you could kind of tell that pretty much no HBCU prospects were on the top draft boards. A lot of these guys still didn't rank as high as other players in their position throughout the NFL Pro Combine. So as good as the Legacy Bowl was and the Combine was, the biggest issue to me was that our guys just didn't test very well. We had a couple guys with great size, guys like Mikey Victor, a 6'3" corner that's rangy, can play corner or safety, but then he goes out and runs a 40-yard dash, and it's a 4.84. That's just not good enough. Aneem Dankwar comes out at 6'7", over 300 pounds, a great offensive tackle, but doesn't test well agility-wise, slow 40s, slow shuttles, things like that. And it really makes NFL scouts think, well, maybe this guy isn't prepared to play in the NFL. So I think the questions with all these different HBCU prospects leading up to the draft are what concerned me. But I was just so let down to see that nobody was willing to take a risk on any of these HBCU guys.
And you're bringing up so many great players because you got Tyreek Stewart that got an undrafted free agent deal, or at least a mini camp deal with the New England Patriots. And the Patriots seem to be very open to taking HBCU players. He's like 6'6", 300 pounds. And I know North Carolina A&T, and I was teasing Ariel about it like a few months ago. They weren't the best team this year. They weren't the A&T of old. They weren't the Aggies of old, but they had talent. So it blows my mind because, especially this year, when you have a Davius Richard, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, that is probably not been watching HBCU football since 2015 when I got to my HBCU Fort Valley. And I saw Devontae Kincaid. Devontae Kincaid was honestly my favorite player in HBCU football. To say that Davius Richard, to me, is not a huge leap, but Davius Richard was better. I don't think is that wild to say? Like, is Davius Richard was the best HBCU quarterback prospect at very least these past 9 years? Is that wrong to say?
Hey, I think he's right up there. You know, you think about top 5 HBCU quarterbacks in the past 10 years, they're definitely neck and neck, just based on their accomplishments alone, you know, being able to make it to the Celebration Bowl, honestly, being a dual threat quarterback. You know, a lot of these things, they were really changing the game as they went on in their careers. Davius Richard, I think, tested the best, and honestly was probably the best HBCU prospect this year. I think that honestly the injury is what scared most people away, which is really sad to say because maybe that was our only chance. Maybe Davius Richard at quarterback out of North Carolina Central was the only chance for HBCU prospect to be drafted this year. But unfortunately, he gets injured in an all-star game a month before the draft. So I think that the timing of it all was a little odd and really hurt his draft stock. But I do feel as though Davius Richards still, with the opportunity that he will get, will still end up being one of the best prospects out of this class.
Yeah, and just so folks that don't know, Davius Richard was in the HBCU Legacy Bowl. He had an amazing first drive, led his team to the touchdown, and he ran for like an RPO, and then he went in and did what Davius Richard does. He runs in for a touchdown. But then, like, we all hype, like, yeah, that's our guy. He's getting drafted. He's going to be the first HBCU quarterback drafted since 2006. And we look, he's still on the ground. And then the game stops and he gets like taken to the medical facility at Tulane, I believe. I believe they played at Tulane. So now it's like, oh my gosh, like this is our guy. Like this is the guy that we all watched and even the world watched, because everybody that was into Deion Sanders going to Colorado, they got a chance to see Davius Richard do his thing and honestly possibly outplay Shedeur Sanders, because Shedeur had a great game as well. But Davius really made a lot of big plays with his arm, with his legs. And they saw this guy that we've been heralding for the past few years, right? So it was something that was very scary. I spoke to him a few weeks ago. We did the interview. It aired on HBCU Post Radio. He was in great spirits. And I told him, like, you're going to get drafted. I want him to think I lied to him, because I was like, man, you're going to get drafted, all this different stuff. But it's like, I've not even seen his name like on the undrafted free agent list. We have it on Clutch Points. I've been keeping up with it. All these guys are getting signed to the actual team, to the rookie minicamp, and he has not gotten signed yet, which is wild to me. But we'll talk about that in a second. But I got to ask you this, right? And we're going to go through essentially, Flicks, almost the exact same outline as last year. And I did this because ain't nothing changed except now no HBC players were drafted. So do you think if maybe Davius Richard went to UNC, or if Aneem Dankwa went to Alabama, do you think that maybe this year in a very odd draft that saw Brendan Rice, the son of Jay Rice, get drafted on day 3, do you think that maybe they would have been picked then?
Definitely. I think that is the biggest difference. It's a lot of this is about the institution that they played at. If Davius Richard was able to compile a Drake May style career and go at North Carolina, do great things, play in some big games on some big moments, and then turn around and go to the draft, maybe he's looking like the second pick or the third pick in the draft. If a guy like Aneem Dankwa is able to play under Nick Saban for a couple of years, start for a couple of years, go play in a college football playoff a couple times, he would definitely get drafted in the top 30 picks. The biggest difference to me is the institutions, because of how HBCUs are viewed and looked at by these different NFL pro scouts. I think that a lot of times the skill level, the competition is looked down upon to the point to where a lot of these HBCU players have a lot to prove leading up to the draft. For a lot of these other players that play FBS or Power 5, the proof is in the details. When you look at the film, you wrote a film and you watch the Alabama versus Texas game, or you watch the Alabama and Auburn game, and you pull from what you want to pull from. For the most part, you can say, okay, a lot of these guys on the field are pro ready, and the skill level and competition is up there. I think that when it comes to looking at a lot of HBCU teams and institutions, the skill level, or essentially who they are playing against, works against them. A lot of these non-conference games aren't as big as they should be. We've seen South Carolina State go up against Clemson. We've seen Jacoby Durant have 2 interceptions against a team like that, and then go on to get drafted by the Rams in the middle rounds of the draft. We've seen the formula that works. I think that so many of these institutions and schools simply aren't agreeing to that formula and buying into it. So we aren't seeing a lot of these big non-conference games come around, and we aren't seeing a lot of guys test well. I think if we had better non-conference opponents and a lot of these players tested better, we could get more players drafted into the NFL.
And that's the thing that really puzzles me about this whole entire thing. Because let's go back to 2022, right? So you see Jacoby Durant gets drafted out of South Carolina State, and he played against Clemson, had a really good game against Clemson, got a couple interceptions, right? But what happened with Joshua Williams then? Because Joshua Williams gets drafted, and we can go back and look at the Fayetteville State 2021 schedule, right? And you look at it, and they didn't play an FCS game. They're D2. They didn't play an FBS game. But you go and get Joshua Williams, and he now has 2 Super Bowl rings. That's the thing that baffles me. You got a guy from Wingate that was a punter last year. Like, he was a punter. So I'm just confused. Are these folks really looking? Like, I just want to know if the whole entire notion that if you're good where you are, they'll find you. if that's even true anymore. Because it seems like to me, there were a lot of guys, even from the Power 5 schools or the Group of 5 schools that weren't selected. But at the same time, I'm trying to figure out what the psychosis of it is. Because I don't understand how we can go from 2 years ago where you have Joshua Williams that didn't play a money game, that he played, didn't even play against, they played against UNC Pembroke and they lost that game. Were scouts looking at that game? Like, what do these folks want? Is it inherently a view that HBCU football is inferior, or is it like a different storyline every draft? Is it, oh, well, this Joshua Williams guy is really good, so we should pick him up? Or is it just like, we're not going to pick anybody this year because HBCU football is so inferior. We're going to use our draft pick on someone that we know can ball out of Alabama or Georgia State. They got somebody from Georgia State before Brendan Rice. But it's crazy to me, Flick. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, there's so many questions surrounding it. You know, even with a guy like Joshua Williams, he tested like super well. He ran like a 4.3 in his 40-yard dash. So some of those numbers do jump off the page. But you're right. He didn't check all the boxes. He didn't play against an FBS school. He didn't transfer down from a Division I school to Division. He didn't do any of those things. He was simply a great player at Fayetteville State and got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in the 3rd round. So there is a big questions about what's the rhyme or reason based on why guys get drafted and why they don't get drafted. I think that checking those boxes of playing an FBS school and testing will do help you in that aspect. But even look at Isaiah Bolden. I mean, Jackson State didn't have the toughest strength of schedule coming into it. He ran a great 40-yard dash, had great testing, got drafted in the 7th round. So I really feel like a lot of this is tied to the testing. But also when it comes to grading these players, you just want to see what they're doing on film, right? And if a lot of guys on the other team are doing a lot of wrong things, if, maybe 5 or 6 of those guys on the 11 on the defense aren't in the correct position or things like that, that hurts. So as I don't think that HBCU football is inferior, I feel like FCS football in general has to jump through the same hoops as a lot of these different HBCUs. But I do feel like at the end of the day, it's going to have to come down to the competition level and who you're playing is. Maybe go play up some more. Maybe that's going to be the key going down the line because it's hard to figure out what the problem is. It really is.
It is. And talking about testing, right? So I'm only going off of what we reported on Clutch Points and HBCU Pulse about Willie Drew. You got Willie Drew out of Virginia State. Before this season, he was getting a lot of buzz. He was on a lot of folks' draft boards saying, hey, this is the HBCU players that have the best prospects. He goes to the combine and he runs in the 40-yard dash a 4.46. And then in the 10-yard split, he finished in 1.49 seconds, tied for 3rd place. The 4.46 in the 40-yard dash, he ranked 13th out of 29 cornerbacks. And then you look at the draft grade, they had him pretty good, saying, hey, he might not be a starter, but he might be a guy you bring in like a backup, and he doesn't get drafted. In a draft where you saw a lot of defensive players drafted, even over quarterbacks, you had like a historic length of time where you didn't see a quarterback drafted until day 3 because it was all like wide receivers, all offensive line, all defensive backs, all defensive linemen. So it's like, I thought at the very least, because here's what I thought. I thought that, listen, I want Davies Richard to get drafted. He's a good brother. I'm a fan of his, and I appreciate him coming on HBCU Pulse Radio. But at the same time, I know how quarterbacks are viewed from HBCUs because they think, oh, they don't know what's going on. The competition's easy. That's why he did all this different stuff. But it seems as if when you look at history, they got respect for the defensive backs. And then you have a Virginia State team that beat Norfolk State. So I'm like, okay, Willie Drew is that guy. And he didn't. I really don't understand it when it comes to just how our HBCU prospects are viewed. But if you're just listening, you listen to HBCU Pulse Radio, I got my guy Flicks in the building, HBCU sports analyst, and we just chopping it up about what is going on with these HBCU players not getting drafted. And Flicks brought up a great point about playing out of conference opponents, but I want to bring this up, Flicks, because it's something I've really been thinking about, right? Are executives scared to take an HBCU draft pick? Are they nervous, Flicks? Because I'm just saying, I'm not saying that, oh, the HBCU guy got to pick the HBCU players, but you got Brad Holmes, North Carolina A&T graduate. He's up there with the Detroit Lions. You got HBCU folks scattered around the league. So you're telling me that with these HBCU folks that are scattered around the league with Jerry Rice and Shannon Sharp and all these different folks that played HBCU football, then you have Marquise Bell, that was one of the best linebackers in the NFL for the Dallas Cowboys. He ain't the reason why they choked in the wild card round. He ain't the reason why. And he got Emmanuel Wilson jumping over people like he did at Fort Valley. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like are the executives scared, Flicks? What's going on?
I mean, the funniest part about this is that the HBCU Legacy Bowl, the Saints, New Orleans Saints, really came out and really made these HBCU players feel at home. I think they even wore the Saints practice jerseys during practice for the HBCU Legacy Bowl. So it's more like, why isn't there a groupthink mentality when it comes to drafting HBCU players? You mentioned that the Lions, Detroit, they have HBCU roots up there. The Saints have come out as allies this year. They gave out some practice uniforms for the team. Last year, they let the HBCU combine happen at their facilities. So you kind of want to think, who's saying no to this? I think there are some executives and some organizations in the NFL that think, okay, HBCU players are quality players. They should be in our league. We should make en routes and pipelines for them. But I do feel like there is a corner of the NFL that honestly doesn't feel like the skill level is good enough. I think they honestly look down on it. I think that there is a different mentality thinking about HBCUs rather than how much better can these players be. I think that a lot of these teams and scouts look at it as, well, they're not playing against anybody. And I think that's the wrong way to look at this when you're trying to judge talent that's on a screen. And maybe even taking it a step farther, I think a lot of these different NFL organizations are turning a blind eye to HBCU sports. You got to think that a lot of these different HBCU teams and these players are playing on some of the biggest stages in college football. The Celebration Bowl was extremely well received by a lot of the public. A lot of people went and saw Howard and Florida A&M play a football game. And you saw a lot of great talent in there, guys like Ian Willer. You got to see Jeremy Musa do some things. You got to see Marcus Riley do some things. And you got to think that these NFL organizations are seeing these things. And they are simply saying, well, no, it's not good enough. And I think at the end of the day, the biggest question is, what is good enough? And also, what do these players have to do to truly gain your attention?
And we got to look at this, too, because you already know where I want to go next, Flick. So in this year, right? This year, you had 11 FCS players picked, no D2 prospects. So last year, you had 10 FCS picks. You had one HBC pick in Isaiah Bowden out of Jackson State. That was Deion Sanders' player. And you had one Division II prospect. So I get on Twitter, and I don't think people see my tweets like that for real, man. I just be tweeting sometimes. Now, I go viral often. I just be going viral. But it's like I just be tweeting because I just tweet my thoughts. And I'm tweeting my thoughts about HBC football. I don't have a verified check mark, but I just tweet my thoughts, and a lot of folks agree with me. Then there was some people that were like, oh, you see, this is a consequence of HBCUs not playing in the FCS playoffs. And I sit here and I look back and I just think about, okay, so is there a player that we all hyped that played in the Celebration Bowl because the Celebration Bowl was so bad? And is there a player that we all thought was so great that played in the FCS playoffs and did pretty well and could have won that game versus Richmond? It's Davius Richard. And Davius Richard, on my show, on HBCU Post Radio, this one on no other platform. He might have talked about it on other platforms, but I specifically asked Davius Richard when he was on HBCU Post Radio. I asked him about what he preferred more. If he preferred the FCS playoffs or the Celebration Bowl, he said both have their benefits, but he liked the experience of the Celebration Bowl. And you have folks that are coming to me and are coming on my post telling me, oh, it's because of the FCS playoffs. So tell me, give me a list outside of South Dakota State who is dominant. They're winning back-to-back championships outside of South Dakota State. Tell me who from an FCS school was picked that played in the playoffs. Because there was a lot of schools, wasn't it, Flicks? There was a bunch of schools that played in FCS playoffs that were really good.
I mean, you even got North Dakota State that was in there, no players drafted. I think the thinking around this, that the Celebration Bowl is somehow hurting HBCU prospects, is laughable. I think that it plays no role in this. I think the FCS playoffs wouldn't get a player from Richmond drafted. Like, I don't think the FCS playoffs is actually that strong or that caliber of a postseason tournament. The same way with the college football playoffs. I think that this has nothing to do with the draft at all. I think it's part of a different conversation But within this conversation, postseason play and players getting drafted are not synonymous. I feel as though the Celebration Bowl, if anything, would bring more popularity and more light to a specific player. We saw that with Davius Richard going up against Shedeur Sanders in the Celebration Bowl. A lot of people got to know who Davius Richard was just because he played against Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders in the Celebration Bowl. And without that game, we would probably not know about Davius Richard or as much about Davius Richard as we do today. I think that there is a problem really lying with the fact that the FCS playoffs is, to some people, is looked at as a step up for some reason. I don't even know what that step is. You don't gain more money from it. You don't gain more popularity from it. The crowd size isn't as big. There aren't many advantages to the FCS playoffs, and I definitely don't think that being drafted is one of them.
So you have Yale. So you have an offensive lineman from Yale that was drafted by the Chicago Bears in round 3, pick 11. They're Ivy League. Doesn't participate in the FCS playoffs. And you have Ivy League teams that, like Harvard, they play HBCUs. Then Yale played Morgan State. So it's like, what are we talking about here? You have South Dakota State, you have Houston Christian, you have Northern Iowa, New Hampshire. So what happened against New Hampshire, Flicks? Didn't we have our top HBCU prospect that beat New Hampshire in the 2022 season? That beat a good New Hampshire team. Not, oh, they're a bad FCS team. Y'all beating up on bad FCS teams. Didn't that team make the FCS playoffs? And they were highly touted. And Davius Richard and North Carolina Central went in there and beat them down. If we're gonna have opinions, we gotta make the opinions make sense. Because all I've been told my whole life, Flicks, is people can have opinions. And they don't got, people can feel how they want to feel. And I often feel the way about a lot of different stuff, Flicks. People can feel the way they want to feel. But if you want to have a real conversation, a respectful conversation, and especially a conversation about how we can get these young men into the league, because some of these guys might say, listen, there was, once again, no HBCU players drafted. There were great guys out there. I might need to transfer. I might need to try to go FBS. I might need to go somewhere that's getting drafted. I might need to go to South Dakota State or somewhere. I might need to be at an HBCU. So if you really want to help HBCU football and you're really trying to say, well, this is the reason why, because you come with facts, because tell me why Yale had somebody drafted, but Davius Richard didn't get taken off that board. Tell me why Aneem Dankwa, who is literally what you were looking for, at least in size, didn't get drafted. Played well. Howard almost beat Eastern Michigan. I'm just trying to figure that part out because everybody has their opinion, and that's okay because we all have diversity of thought, and I understand why folks like the FCS playoffs. But when you come and say this different stuff, when we see that there are talented HBCU prospects that were not drafted, and we're like, why? And you say something so erroneous that the whole HBCU Twitter comes together and says, man, you don't. That should say something, just to me, Flicks. But if y'all just listening, this is HBCU Pulse Radio. All right, we got Randall Bars in the building, and Flicks is in the building. We talking about the HBCU draft and about how no HBCU player was selected and how folks have erroneous, dubious claims as to why. But Flicks, what do you think about this stuff, man?
It's funny. It's laughable. The last HBCU player drafted was actually in the Celebration Bowl. That's Isaiah Bolden. So it's kind of funny to think that the Celebration Bowl is somehow hindering players when it's the last time a player was drafted. They were involved in it. I think the Celebration Bowl is great. There's been so much pushback around the Celebration Bowl from a particular group and crowd. And I honestly feel like it has nothing to do with the actual game itself. I think it has to do with other things. You know, there's this whole idea that the FCS playoffs is so great and so much greater than any other postseason contest is ridiculous. And the postseason contests don't get guys drafted either. I'm sorry. Nobody watched the college football playoff and was like, JJ McCarthy is now the guy. Like they thought about that far before then. Jim Harbaugh said he was the best quarterback at Michigan far before the playoffs. But anyway, there is a very, like I said, there's a corner of sports that thinks down upon HBCU football, and almost to the point to where they feel that HBCU football needs to prove itself to somebody, some imaginary figure, and it has to prove itself or at least measure up to it. Well, to those people, I'd say this. Instead of trying to hold HBCU football to whatever standard you are looking at, I think that we should go a little bit farther in this conversation and go, let's match up the players. All right. You brought up Willie Drew earlier, Randall, and the biggest issue with Willie Drew is that he had great numbers. He ran like a 4.40, but in relation to the rest of his cornerback prospects, he's still ranked around number 33, and his 40-yard dash in the DBs was around 13th. So there isn't necessarily a problem with the skill level of each HBCU prospect or team. It's simply about judging them against their peers in the FBS. That seems to be the issue. That is where things are beginning to fall apart. With guys like John Huggins, Patrick Garbo, Sundiata Anderson are graded upon the same scale as their counterparts in the FBS, and they still rank as high, that is where I think we may see some change, right? If a lot of these guys, if Willie Drew ends in the top 10 projectile of DBs in the NFL Combine, if he somehow has a 40-yard dash that is one of the fastest 40-yard dashes of the DBs, then I think we may be able to see some change. I don't think that the Celebration Bowl is the issue. I think that it is our players and where they rank testing wise to these other top prospects, right? We saw a guy in North Carolina State, Peyton Wilson, linebacker, go and run like a 4.4 40-yard dash. He was the all ACC Defensive Player of the Year and gained a lot of those type of statistics. And that was a big point of emphasis going into draft time. It was like, well, what's up with this guy? Where'd he come from? Well, all that leads to a 4th round draft pick for Peyton Wilson. I think that when it comes to a lot of these HBCU guys, we haven't seen a lot of guys gain that much traction during the offseason. From the end of the season to the draft, the only player that we really saw gain a lot of momentum was Davius Richard. And his injury, of course, kind of set things back. But if we see more HBCU players begin to gain momentum, guys like Mikey Victor had a lot of momentum going into his pro day, just ran a slow 40-yard dash, which really hurt him. The 4.84 really hurt him. But if all that expectation is led onto like a track like Isaiah Bolden, where you go, oh, wow, he's a pretty good player. Oh, wow, he plays nickel. Oh, wow, he plays corner. He can actually return the football, punt returns, kick returns. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then he runs a pro day, goes around a 4.3 40-yard dash, and you go, well, okay, what's his size? He's 6'2", 200 pounds. Well, that makes a lot of sense to go and draft a guy like that. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these prospects, when they are compared to their counterparts, they just aren't living up to the hype. And that's the biggest issue. It's not the Celebration Bowl, and it's not solely based on competition they're playing against. It's a lot about each individual player.
And I think that in sports, Flicks, so we're going to move on to undrafted free agency after this. But one thing I noticed about sports, and this is something that is very prevalent in the NBA, more than I would say is prevalent in football. But I think that you have a lot of folks that want to see the worst instead of the best so they can say I was right. Now, them being right don't do nothing for them because they don't do what we do. Because if we're right, there's a benefit to us being right because that goes to our credibility and it makes our credibility higher. It makes us, okay, he must know what he's talking about. Because I'll give you a perfect example. I said on Twitter in December 2022, the day of the Celebration Bowl, when North Carolina Central beat Jackson State, that Deion Sanders couldn't coach. And a lot of folks were very upset at me. And I came on HBCU Post Radio before we got on Sirius XM. The clip is still up there. I said, I believe that he knows football. But I think the problem when it comes to Deion Sanders and his coaching staff is I believe that they rely a lot on talent more than actual scheme. And we saw that teams that had a better scheme that were coached well, we saw they lost. We saw South Carolina State. Buddy Pugh been coaching forever. They beat Deion Sanders in Jackson State. You saw Trey Oliver. They beat Deion Sanders in Jackson State. And folks calling me all type of names, all type of different mean things. You don't know football. What's your football resume? But then they get beat by Stanford. And a lot of folks, Flicks, on that YouTube video that I did with Ariel, they came and they were like, you know what? You had a point. He knew all along. It shifted. So that goes to my credibility. So it's like, hey, clearly this guy is watching the games and he knows what he's talking about. But you got folks, that was just an example, I want to bring out that was one of the things that went to my credibility. People saying, hey, listen to this guy. He knows what he's talking about. But you got folks that don't have a podcast, or at least a podcast people listen to. No one really takes them seriously. And they're firing off these negative takes because you were hoping that no one from FAMU or Howard got drafted. You were hoping because if they do, it flies straight into the face of your point. If someone from South Dakota State and from FAMU and from Howard got drafted, because now that flies in the face of your point. When there's numbers to back up the fact that the Celebration Bowl players get drafted as well, and the FCS playoff folks get drafted, especially in the FCS championship. They were hoping because they want it to be right when they're going to be right at their job on Monday. That's it. They're going to be right, their Twitter audience. That's it. Like and I'm not just talking about one person. I'm talking about really in the whole entire scheme of sports. People want these guys and these young women to fail so they can be right. They want Caitlin Clark to fail. They want Dave Rich to fail. They want all these folks to fail so they can fire off their talking points. They want LeBron to get swept. Oh, he's not better than Michael Jordan. Why don't you just watch the game and enjoy the game and sit back and we're not on the radio no more. Shut up. Because we're not on the radio no more. And shut up. Like I just don't understand why we consume sports like this. I really don't. Well, we consume sports to see people fail. I just don't get it.
It's nitpicking. It's quite honestly, it's nitpicking. It's trying to find something wrong with something that's actually pretty good. And I think that the HBC football, the trajectory of it is not as high as it once was with Coach Prime. I will say that. Popularity, things like that, everything was really booming with Coach Prime. But nonetheless, there's still great talent there. Still great games, still great players, still great coaches. And to somehow think that this stuff just changed overnight is ridiculous. I think that it hasn't. I think HBC football is still some great football. I think we still have a bunch of great players, great prospects. We're going to look at a guy like Jarvian Howard out of Alcorn State. He's going to join Emmanuel Wilson in the backfield at Green Bay Packers. He's going to make a big difference for this Green Bay Packers backfield. So I think a lot of these players that even are getting chances are going to be able to show and prove a lot of people wrong. Because at the end of the day, like you're saying, some people are waiting for these guys to fail, but a lot of these guys are just waiting for one opportunity, and they're going to take it and run with it like Emmanuel Wilson did.
Yeah. And that, that made me proud, Flicks, because that he went to John C. Smith, and we got to acknowledge that. He played for John C. Smith, and he came from John C. Smith to Fort Valley because his coach was at Fort Valley. One of the guys he knew from John C. Smith, Coach Flowers. But he's a Fort Valley guy. Like, he on that list. He on that Rayfield Wright list. He on that Ricardo Lockett, Marquette King list. He on that Tyrone Poole list. He's on the Eddie Anderson list. He's on the Derek Wimbush list. I'm just saying, because where he did his senior year at Fort Valley, when they talked about him in the playoffs from Fort Valley State, like, listen, so like, they're gonna start playing with us too. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna start playing like Fort Valley don't got some people, but we're gonna transition into more positive things. But I do want to say this about the Deion Sanders point about him bringing popularity. He definitely did, and I think that he brought the casual fan that otherwise would have turned their nose up to HBCU football. Because what I've discovered as well in a more granular context, because now we have a year of him at Colorado, I don't think it was just, we're watching HBCU football, then they're terrible. Like, these folks that follow Deion, they don't watch college football, period. Some of them don't watch sports. They just know Deion, and they're fans of him and his family, which is fine. And they just know about sports from him. So they look at sports through the lens of Deion Sanders is the greatest thing ever to happen to sports. And now, this Oregon talked trash to him. Oh, they're horrible. Or, Stanford came back. They should be banned from playing football. Like, that's how they look at sports. They look at sports from, I love Deion so much. And I think that's the thing that festers when it comes to Deion. So one thing I'll say is I don't think that the popularity sense goes to just the HBCU side, but what I think people saw, and a lot of folks that stuck around in HBCU football, they saw the Davius Richards, they saw the Mookie Colliers, they saw the Patrick Godbolts and the folks that were at South Carolina State, and they saw the folks at FAMU that play like Isaiah Land, even though the Orange Blossom class was pretty bad 2022. I'm not gonna lie, the Orange Blossom class didn't go well for FAMU, but they saw Isaiah Land, how people were talking about him. I think folks that stayed around were like, nah, these guys are nice. But I think that when you look at that Celebration Bowl number and you look at that slight drop, I think you can attribute that some to Deion. But like I argued in my article, you can also look at the fact of what was going on at that same time. But I can't lie and say that it wasn't some Deion effect leaving HBCU football. And I think that we got to figure out a way that's not a celebrity to build that back up, because I think that helps everyone out. But I do want to pivot to the undrafted free agents. So we got a lot of guys that did get picked up. I just want to just say this. So as we're recording this, Davius Richard has not been selected or has not been picked up by anyone. So Flicks, I got to toss it because we talked about it earlier. So right now, this episode is probably going to air on SiriusXM. What we just did is going to air on Friday. But this episode is probably going to come out sometime Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we might be late. This might be a freezing cold take at this point. But why has Davius Richard not been picked up? Like, do you have a theory as to why?
Not yet. Usually I take about 7 to 10 days after the draft. And after then, that's when the dust is truly settled to me. A lot of these guys are going to be like invited to rookie mini camps and things like that. But at the end of the day, the agents, these guys' agents, Davius Richard's agent is probably negotiating deals right now, figuring out what to pick up, what not to pick up, where to move, where not to move. And honestly, it is somewhat concerning. We look at a guy like Aeneas Dennis, a Division II college football player out of Benedict, got picked up, got a minicamp invite already a day after the draft. So when you look at Davius Richard, you would think that maybe he get a call at the end of the night or maybe the day after. And it's simply put, he hasn't gotten that. And the question around it is always going to be the injury. How severe is the injury? They were really quiet about it for about a month. They came out last week and gave a small tad bit of news about it, just saying that he's okay, he's good to go. He could be able to practice and things like that. But the injury concern to me has to put a question mark on Davius Richard, because if you dislocated your ankle a month ago, I can't expect you to participate in rookie minicamp next week. I honestly can't. And why would I send you an invite anyway? So I think that is a question. They probably are talking to different organizations, revealing the different, what the injury information is. But I think that may be what is holding him up from getting picked up so soon.
What's going on, everybody? Randall Barnes with HBCU Pulse here. And did you know that learning actually makes a sound? It's true. Listen. You heard that? That's the sound of learning a new language with Babbel. Listen. Sometimes learning a new language can be overwhelming, especially when we have a lot going on. Babbel is here to help. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or ask your parents to, or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's convenient courses have helped me learn real-life conversation skills in a different language. It's easy to prep for me being outside for my next trip abroad, learning how to ask for directions, how to order food, because I got to eat, and then speak to merchants so I can get something to remember the trip by. Plus, they have speech recognition technology that helps you improve pronunciation and accent. If that sounds good to you, I need you to tap in and download Babbel. Here's a special limited time deal for our HBCU Pulse Radio listeners. Right now, you can get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription. This is only for HBCU Pulse listeners at babbel.com/HBCU. That's babbel.com, spelled BABBEL.com/HBCU. Rules and restrictions may apply, and tell them Randall sent you. I think that, and I hate to say this, I think that the future of Davius Richard might really hurt the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I think postseason games in general, but especially the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And I don't think it's something that was necessarily the HBCU Legacy Bowl's fault at all. I don't think it's anybody's fault, because that's just a freak injury. It happens when you can come to sports, right? But I think that Davius Richard being the guy and us all thinking he was going to be the one that got drafted, clearly has a good head on his shoulders, good brother, and he doesn't get picked up in the draft or signed. He got injured in a postseason All-Star game. I think guys are going to start to think, because we saw on the general college football side, there were a lot of guys that didn't do pro days. There was a lot of guys that didn't do the combine. There's a lot of guys that didn't show up to the draft. They was at home. I was like, what the world? I'm like, why would you not want to be there? I mean, because because if I'm Caleb Williams and I'm getting drafted, I'm going up there, I'm shaking the commissioner's hand, everybody cheering for me, I do my interview, we going to Applebee's. We in Detroit. Like, what restaurant we going to? We going to Applebee's. I don't know, they got a Cheddar's up there. All right, I know Applebee's be everywhere, so we going to Applebee's. I'm getting my fries and my chicken tenders with the pink lemonade, the strawberry lemonade Flicks. Like, I'm telling you, that's what I'm doing. So I'm like, people didn't come to the draft, so it was just sort of odd to me. So, like, I think that Davius's injury, in all seriousness, though, I really think that it could affect how people view that, because he has the tape against an FBS opponent. He has like tape in the FCS playoffs. So it goes to the point of the FCS playoffs, because I'm not saying that they're totally wrong. I'm just saying that some of the folks puffing their chest out is being erroneous. But you have tape against white schools. Let's be for real. You got tape against white schools. You got tape against black schools. You got tape against a Division II school. You got tape against Deion Sanders and Jackson State and that number one FCS defense. He got tape all around. And he's not picked up. He's not selected. Great story. And then literally in that postseason ball game, led his team first drive to a touchdown. And he showed a bunch of variety of what he could do. It's very odd to me. But I want to speak on this as well before we pick our favorite undrafted free agent signing. But Marcus Riley, right? So Marcus Riley, Florida A&M. He also was a player at Bethune-Cookman. So he signed with the New York Jets. And I don't know if you saw this, Flicks, but his agent, Elon Patterson of Franchise Sports Agency, said that he signed a $2,835,000 3-year deal with the Jets. So I would be remiss not to say this, but to toss this to you. If Marcus Riley, and you said about testing and all these different things, right? If Marcus Riley is getting $2,835,000 for 3 years with the Jets, no minicamp invite, he on the roster, and he getting this money. Because that's significant money to me. I know people like, oh, that's not enough to live in LA. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's not enough to live in New York. They were like, that's not enough to live in Tallahassee. Like they just be saying, like, I need 10 million. Like what? Like, because the people don't understand money. But I broke that down. That's like about $700,000, like around that amount, almost $800,000 before taxes, of course, gets taken out. Because I did the math, Flicks. I did the math because I was like, whoa, okay. So like, Flicks, like, if he's getting signed like that, he getting 2 million. Why is he not getting drafted in the later round at the very least? I'm confused.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. You know, big contract, good numbers and everything. But of course, NFL, everything's non-guaranteed. So hopefully he's able to make it and make that active roster when it comes to the fall. But a guy like Marcus Riley definitely had the tools to get drafted in this year's draft. Like you're saying, it's very odd to see some of these guys who are like, okay, that's a good fit and he's making the money and everything. But then it's like, well, why'd he go undrafted? That's always going to be the question surrounding some of these guys. Why'd they go undrafted? With Marcus Riley in particular, I felt that his return skills were great. He had a great 40-yard dash. He's a pretty good receiver also. He's good in one-on-one. He's good at pretty much every level of the field, short, medium, and downfield catching ability. So I really felt like he was one of the guys that checked off a lot of boxes. I did think that his size was probably going to hurt him when it comes to getting drafted. But at the end of the day, talent is talent, right? And as much as everybody wants to say, well, the Celebration Bowl did this or that did that, at the end of the day, talent is talent. And for a guy like Marcus Riley, his film just jumps off the screen. You watch him, he's scoring 50-yard, 60-yard touchdowns. He's taking back punt returns and kick returns left and right. Some people you just can't say no to, and I think he was one of them.
And I think we got to look at the fact of this, right? In the Orange Blossom Classic, that Florida A&M pretty much dominated, he had a 96-yard touchdown return on like that first play. Like literally the first play is kickoff. He takes that thing back 96 yards. That's when I knew. I'm like, no, this FAMU team is special. That's when I knew Jack State ain't winning this game. And I'm just telling the truth. I was like, nah, bro. Like FAMU is fired up. Like clearly Willie said something in that locker room that connected with his players. And I think Willie was like, we ain't gonna lose the third game. Is that right? Yeah, that's right, coach. And Marcus was like, bet. He caught that thing. He ran it. And so I'm like, how do you see that on film? And then on top of that, the NFL is changing the kickoff rules to be like the UFL now. So you want somebody with this new rule that in that open field, open space, that can make something happen, and you're not going to draft them, but you're going to give my man $2 million. If he makes the roster, he getting $2 million in New York. And for what I understand from a lot of folks talking about money on Twitter or X, $2 million is minimum wage in New York, man.
Might be able to work at McDonald's and make that, I guess.
Go work at the bodega.
Right.
Like the bodega workers making $2 million. If you listen to Twitter, $2 million, nothing. Like according to folks on Twitter, if Marcus Riley go to the club and he try to talk to her, how much you make? $2 million. Get off my face, you bum. Like, what a real ball is that? Like folks in money are hilarious. Like what in the world? You give me $2 million, you might not see me again. Tell you that much. I might hire a new Randall to do this show. You may talk to a new Randall at this point. You give me $2 million, I'll flip it, man. But listen, but folks talk about money is how I'm talking. It's so crazy. But let me ask you this, Flicks. Right? All joking aside, right? So there are several people that were picked up thus far that we know. As of Monday morning is April 29th. There's a lot of guys that are picked up, right? So who are like a couple of your favorite undrafted free agent signings thus far from HBCUs?
So we got some good ones. One thing I will say for everybody listening, you see some of these guys have like mini camp invites, rookie mini camp, stuff like that. Those are guys we're really going to keep our fingers crossed for, right? It's like rounds of elimination, basically, when it comes to cuts for young guys. But getting past the rookie mini camp is definitely number one. But some guys that aren't on rookie mini camp that just signed undrafted free agent signings, Aneem Dankwa going to the Philadelphia Eagles. That to me was something that I had to circle just because of the lineage of good offensive linemen at the Philadelphia Eagles and the somewhat changing of guard for the Eagles. Jason Kelce is now leaving as center. He was one of the best centers in the NFL for the past 10 years. A lot of this Eagles O-line is changing. Lane Johnson and guys, a lot of these guys are 30 plus. So at this point, they would be transitioning to a new guard of offensive linemen in the next couple of years. So if Aneem Dankwa does make the squad for the Philadelphia Eagles, becomes a rotation guy, maybe plays left tackle and right tackle, moves around a bit, I think that he could find he's at a place that he can find and call home, which is most important for a lot of these different prospects. You want to really find a place that works for you. And I think that this place works for Aneem Dankwa. Another guy that I'm looking at is Jordan Toes out of Morgan State. He's going to go around the corner to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have needed some help on the back end and at safety and linebacker. He could do some things, right? We saw a guy like Chuck Clark for the Ravens do a lot for their backfield for the past 5 or 6 years. Things have changed recently, but a guy like Jordan Toes fits that mold of safety that the Ravens like. They like to put a guy in the box or move him around or really be able to use his athleticism against a different offense. So Jordan Toes, to me, is definitely going to be a guy to watch out for during this year. And then the last guy that I really like was Terrell Jennings. Terrell Jennings going to the Patriots, man. Big, strong running back out of FAMU. He does have a mini camp invite, so let's keep our fingers crossed for him. But when it comes to Terrell Jennings, this guy runs like a grown man, right? He's a guy that you would think his game transitions to the NFL better than a lot of other players, just given the fact that he's a between the tackles type of running back, and he's also a guy that can catch the ball too. When you see him at FAMU, he looks like one of the biggest players on the field. Those type of guys stand out and jump out on film, and you really want to see what they can do at the next level. So those are 3 guys that I'm super interested in watching.
I think that's a great list. Of course, man, we share Aneem Dankwa. Like I said, man, you can't teach size, man. Like you can't teach 6'8". You know, you can't teach that. If you could teach it, I teach myself, man. I'm telling you, like I would teach myself to be like about at least 6 foot, man. If you could teach that, all right, you'd be born like that. All right. But it's like I was shocked that he didn't get like drafted because it's like he's sort of what you want when it comes to size, especially on that offensive line. But Isaiah Major is the first person I point at for me being such a fan of FAMU, and then also just sort of knowing that this was their year and him being that determining factor to FAMU winning the Celebration Bowl. He had 106 tackles this past season, 63 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 2 interceptions, including that key interception in Celebration Bowl, 5 quarterback hits, 3 pass breakups. That sounds to me like someone that's almost like Marquise Bell. That's what it sounds like to me, like how Marquise Bell was when he came out and he did his thing and he went to the Dallas Cowboys. I thought the Cowboys, and my writer Winton wrote a piece about it. Like, we thought the Cowboys might pick up Isaiah Major because clearly Dan Quinn's not there anymore, but Dan Quinn spoke very highly of Marquise Bell. So you're thinking that, hey, you got Marquise Bell, got Isaiah Major, so might as well bring him in, because I think that, Willie Simmons had a lot of great defensive guys. He's an offensive mastermind, but he had a lot of great defensive guys at FAMU. I know for me also, I'm very happy for Aeneas Dennis. I'm very happy for him because Aeneas, and we covered Division II football. A lot of folks slept on Division II football, but they started to wake up when they saw Benedict making history, because I think that everybody likes history, to see history happen. But you look at Aeneas came from Shorter, right? He came from Shorter. And then you have him throw for 3,098 yards and 23 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, 62.8 completion percentage. And even in that game against Lenore Ryan, where folks were ready to say, oh, Chinnisberry ain't ready for prime time, he's not clutch. But like you had a guy that he recruited that had actually a really great game against Lenore Ryan, who ultimately made a run until they got taken out of the Division II playoffs. So like, Aeneas Dennis is someone I'm very happy for. I'm just sort of bullish on quarterbacks from HBCUs because I feel like they're not going to respect them, and they're not going to immediately get the opportunity to shine. And then even if they do get the opportunity, like the guy that was Division II from I believe he's from Colorado School of Mines. He was actually a really good player, and he gets the opportunity to play early in the season when Justin Fields gets injured. Has actually a really good game on Sunday Night Football. And people are like, he's a Division II guy. He's not good. And it was like Division II graduates saying, and I'm like, he's not good. Like you went to a school that's in the NAIA. You should be supporting him. You went to a school that's Division III. You went to a school that's Division II. Like, why are y'all trashing that man? Like we should all be supporting him, because if he's getting an opportunity, what makes you think Davius won't? So like, hopefully Aeneas gets that opportunity to really prove himself. I'm really happy for Mikey Victor going to the Patriots. Like, he did his thing with Eddie Robinson. I am swag. He is swag for real. You know what I mean? So like, I got a lot of folks like Sunday out and Anderson. I think with the Seahawks, he can do some stuff. I'm not that happy as someone that's a Ravens and Falcons fan, because I'm from Georgia, that you got Isaiah Majors went to the Saints. I'm not happy about that, okay? Because it's like, what about the rival? Like what? We rivals. We don't need him sacking Michael Penix or maybe we do need to sack Kirk Cousins. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm just saying because maybe maybe he does bad, and then now we bring in Michael Penix. Michael Penix show he like that. I don't know. But it's like Willie Drew getting picked up by the Panthers. I don't know. I don't know if I would have wished that on him though. Going to the Panthers. I don't know. You said good. I thought Davis would get signed by the Panthers because listen, they need some hope for Bryce Young, because Bryce Young don't pan out. Like, wouldn't it be great if Davius went to the Panthers and then he's a Florida guy, but he played for North Carolina Central and he comes in and then like he becomes the quarterback? Wouldn't that be cool? I think that'd be dope.
It would be nice. I mean, talk about landing spots for Davis. I think the Dolphins might be a nice spot too. Talking about Florida and things like that. You know, him and that high-powered offense. Good luck stopping that.
But why did the Ravens not pick up Davius though? Because the Ravens, there was a lot of people that were HBCU folks that are Ravens fans. Like I said, I'm a Ravens fan, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, why'd you pick up that guy from Kentucky when like Davius was right there? And I said this to Davius in my interview with him. Like he's like a Lamar Jackson-esque player. I don't like solely compare him to Lamar because I think that there's some things he does differently than Lamar. And he compared himself to Josh Allen. Like Davius said, he's more like a Josh Allen type of player. Like, why would you not get that player, especially when you got your backup that left? You know what I'm saying? He left. So it's like, why are you going to bring in a backup that a lot, everybody, it wasn't just me, everybody was like, why are you bringing him in? When Davius was right there was a lot of teams that was like, the Saints like Davius. Like you said, the Saints were down there at the Lexi Bowl. It's just a lot of things that were very interesting. But I'm excited about what we would consider the auxiliary guys, the offensive line, like Tariq Stewart. I think Tariq Stewart can really find his place on a rebuilding Patriots team. I think Drake May is going to be better than a lot of folks think. I watched Drake May. I became sort of a fan of Drake May after that FAMU game. When I saw him, like, okay, nah, he like that. And then I saw some, yeah, but he was lining up. It wasn't like, it's personal against FAMU. He was lining up everybody, but a lot of his footwork and all the different stuff, people can change. I think that was a good enough pick for the Patriots because they're not. I don't think that they're gonna get a slam dunk, and they're trying to get the anti-Mac Jones at this point. I think Drake May is the anti-Mac Jones. So I mean, like, I think Tariq Stewart be great at that. Patrick Godball, like the defensive players and the trenches. I'm glad that they got picked up, but I want to ask you this, Flicks, because I can immediately tell you one person that I think was crazy that didn't get picked up. I don't know why Looper didn't get picked up yet, because we talk about Davius, but Looper, Flicks, we saw with our own eyes, and we saw it in the Lenore Ryan playoff game in the Division II playoffs. You got Looper getting double teamed like every possession, because if you put one man on him on the offensive line, he's going to literally push past them and get to your quarterback. And I feel like his stats sort of suffered, not a lot, but his stats like suffered because he's that dominant. But he was, to me, the anchor of that Benedict defense for like all we saw in Division II. Like, he was the guy. So I'm shocked that you had all them folks that were NFL scouts that went to Benedict. They were posting about him every day, right? And you have Aeneas Dennis that gets picked up, but not Lubert. Sort of odd to me.
Very odd. I think there was around 16 NFL scouts at Benedict's facility the past year, talking about football season, to go see Lubert. You all just got Jaden Brown, Aeneas Dennis. These guys, the list goes on. Caden High, it's a long list. Half of the guys are South Carolina State. But the guys that were able to get drafted, like you're saying, Aeneas Dennis has gotten that chance. It's really odd to see that Looper didn't get that chance yet. But just taking out his raws, his relative athletic score, some of the issues were the size. Just 5'11", 286. It's kind of tough sometimes to figure out where you're going to actually play, because maybe you drop that weight, get down to, I don't know, that's like 30 pounds. You probably don't drop that weight and get to linebacker, but you're probably going to stay on the defensive line. But just testing-wise, this in test well ran like 5'2", 40. But at the end of the day, it's about what you do on the field, right? And how they play the game film, what it looks like on the field. So to me, with Looper, somebody's got to take a chance on him because he's that good, right? Even you ask like the teams that he's played against, who do they game plan for? It's probably Looper. You know, there's a real reason why he was double teamed almost every play and was still able to come out with plus 10 sacks every year of his career. The Looper Danellis is a factor. And I think that all he needs is simply a chance somewhere. And maybe that chance isn't in the NFL. Maybe the UFL gives him a chance before then. We see a lot of undersized defensive linemen usually get chances in other leagues and then make their way to NFL, whether through special teams or a specialty program, or simply put, they've shown out at the defensive line. So I think with Looper, if he just gets on the field anywhere, he'll show himself, and then more teams will come looking, because at the end of the day, lining him up against some of these other bigger defensive tackles at 6'4", 6'5", that might be able to play that nose guard position for some of these teams, or that 3-tech position. Maybe they don't feel as though Looper is able to hold that position down yet. Maybe he has to prove himself at a different league in order to get a chance in the NFL. Maybe that's Canada. Maybe that's UFL. We'll figure it out soon.
That's why I didn't really like how the UFL did the merger with the XFL and the USFL, because I think that instead of like having like the same amount of teams that was in each league, you should have brought in some more UFL teams and some more XFL teams, so you can have more of like a spread of talent of guys that I know that's a business, right? Because it's a business, because you want to, when you consolidate, you want to, like, there's the benefit of consolidating two brands, but also you want to cut cost. So now, like, you're bringing up, hey, these are the most known and most successful brands and teams in the USFL and the XFL. And then these markets, we merge it together, and we're going to keep these teams and dump the other ones that don't work. And maybe they do eventually expand. But I think that level of consolidation, like in average everyday life, hurt the worker. It hurt the prospects. Because if you had more teams in the UFL, a Lubert, maybe a Davis Richard, if he doesn't get picked up, which I think he will, but if he doesn't get picked up, like, they would have more opportunities to showcase their skill. But you're taking that opportunity away, because that's what consolidation does. It's done it to the media industry. You know, like that. That's why I'm here with you right now, Flicks. We be on the sports station, Flicks. We be talking about like, right. Consolidation hurt my chances. And the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Bill Clinton, you my guy. Why'd you sign that, Bill Clinton? We're gonna talk about if I meet him one day, we're gonna talk about that, Bill Clinton. You got to give me a detailed reason why you killed my future, Bill Clinton. I'm not gonna lie to you. But like, I think that that sort of hurt just like the prospects, man. I really hope that the Canadian Football League, got Aubrey Miller going up there to the Canadian Football League, and you have the the UFL. I think that like there's opportunities that's there, but the part I just hate about it, man, because like you listen to like some of these interviews, man, and I know for me, my interview with Davis was a little bit different because I talked about sort of the storylines of what we talked about on the radio show and the podcast, where it's like, hey, like FCS playoffs or the Celebration Bowl, and we talked about stuff like that. But he went on a lot of these different platforms, and same thing with Lubert and some other folks, and they were asked, hey, like if the NFL doesn't work out, like what's the next step? And you would hear what they would say, and they'd say some amazing stuff. Like they want to be therapists, they want to be entrepreneurs, and it's like I think that's so great because that's the allure of college life, and you have these players that have the opportunity to get NIL now, but I hate that might have to be the future where you played football at this high level, but you don't get that opportunity. You have the memories and you're able to still build a life for yourself, provide for your family, and then ultimately have that legacy and hopefully be proud that you graduated from an HBCU. But being a therapist is great, but you want to be a football player. You want to be in the NFL. You want to get what Jerry Rice and Shannon Sharp did. You want to get what Marquise Bell and Emmanuel Wilson have. And you're a therapist, like you're an entrepreneur. Those are great things, but your dream was to be in the NFL and play football professionally. And these guys don't get the opportunity. And that hurts a little bit because I want them to achieve their dream, just like how I've been able to achieve mine, But I don't want to like be like negative or sad. But I want to get your reaction on that, Flicks, before we wrap up.
Yeah, definitely felt that. Look at a guy like Bishop Bonnet about 2 years ago, great running back out of FAMU. He's now like working in a managerial position for a construction company. And look, these guys are going to do great things in life after football, regardless if it's NFL or not. To me, is the fact that there may not be an option for some of these guys. That kind of sucks. Some of these guys playing Division I football, playing some of the best football of their lives for the past 4 years, don't get the right opportunity at the next level. Just doesn't sit right with me. As much as I feel like a lot of these guys are gaining so much stuff from their institutions, I feel like one of the last things for some of these athletes is that they get what they deserve and they get a shot at playing in the National Football League. It really almost feels as though with the state of the draft and how it is and how a lot of HBC players aren't getting drafted, a lot of these different backup plans are kind of looking like the A plan instead of the B plan, where, when you're playing football and you're dedicating around 6 to 8 hours of your life every day to a sport, you think that you'd be able to come out of this and at least get a shot at playing some of the best football ever. And the fact that some of these guys aren't getting those options or really aren't getting put in those positions to even have a chance to play at the next level is disheartening. It is. And as much as I feel like a lot of these guys are going to be great players after football, for some people, I don't think football's over yet. I really don't feel like it's over yet. I feel like this, you got at least 2 or 3 more years to figure out if you got it, if you don't got it. Because, simply put, guys like Bishop Bonnet were amazing on the football field. To go 3 months after the season and go, oh, well, he's done playing football forever. It's like, well, why? And from an entertainment standpoint, from a fan standpoint, from a football standpoint, you want these type of guys a part of your league. And I really feel like the NFL doesn't understand what they're missing out on right now. Yeah.
And I think that's very key. And I know like what people might say, if they listen this far, they'll be like, oh, well, it's only so many teams. There's only 30. There's only 32 teams. And it's like, I get that these are the best football players in the world. And I also get that the HBCU players aren't the only ones going through this. I totally get that because there are folks that play for Alabama. Everybody from Alabama don't get drafted. Everybody from Georgia doesn't get drafted. Like, but folks from Georgia State do. Let me stop. Let me stop. Because when I saw, because Georgia State, that's University System of Georgia. I got a lot of love for Georgia State. Now they did deny me. And I'm glad. I guess that's a blessing in disguise. They did deny you before I even, because they had like a thing, Flicks, like you can put in your SAT score, your GPA. They said, since they would not admit me. I'm like, dang. But like, I remember that, But like the fact that you had someone from Georgia State, and Georgia State lost to Tennessee State, I think last year. Then like someone from England, Flicks, from England, they play American. I thought football was like what we call soccer over there. I'm like, you got something from like, I'm like, listen, they say, oh, well, do you play on TV? HBCUs play on TV. I know for a fact that you're not watching England football on ESPN unless it's soccer. Unless what we call soccer. They play football over there. Well, I'm like, how you got that man for England?
Right. Now, some of these decisions, even we saw a punter get drafted like in the 3rd or 4th round this year. It's like, well, why are you drafting a punter? I don't think anybody else was after him except that team. So, yeah, I feel you completely. Some of these guys that are in the league or at least get drafted, it's like, well, was that like a pity draft pick? Like, you know what I mean? Was this based on like some marketing scheme that your organization has, or is this based on football? And some of the times it feels like it's not about football. It's not a football decision. It feels like might be some marketing involved in there.
Well, pity us, man. Pity the HBCU players. Market as imagine if someone wanted to come out and be for DEI, right? And they're like, you know what? We support diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we support these HBCU because that's why I wanted to say when we was doing the topics that's going to be on the radio. Mm-hmm. I was like I feel like some of these GMs, not all of them. I'm not saying this is about a specific GM, but this is just a theory that floated in my mind of what's going on in the world. I feel like a lot of these GMs though don't want to be hit with you just got a DEI pick. Like you got this HBC player, that's such a DEI pick, and then it don't work out. You see, he's hiring folks for DEI. He's hiring folks to win the Super Bowl, and then they fired. And then it's like, all because I picked the HBCU guys. Right. Because people are crazy. So but this was an odd draft. I would just say this. It was just a very odd draft. Because the thing that shocked me the most, even because I expected for no HBC players to get drafted, but the fact that Brendan Rice dropped as low as he did, and we could talk about this real quick before we go. This is like the son of HBCU legend Jerry Rice, right? And I did a whole entire video on him with Clutch Points about that legacy and that storyline of him trying to fulfill that legacy and him wanting to sort of branch out and do his own thing. And you have Brendan Rice that is incredibly talented that gets picked up on day 3. And there's nothing wrong with getting picked up on day 3, but if him to just drop that low and go to the Chargers was Justin Herbert should be doing backflips because he got a guy. And then Brandon should be excited because he's staying on the West Coast. But I just don't understand, Flicks, and maybe you can help me out. How you got a Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is drafted number 1 overall as a quarterback. So from my understanding of football, since a lot of folks, when I did the Deion Sanders take, said, I don't know football. From what I understand of football, the quarterbacks throw the ball. They run too, but they throw the ball. So how is he the number 1 pick for throwing the ball and you not going to draft higher the guy he threw the ball to? I don't get it. Is Caleb Williams so talented? He's making Brendan Rice run fast, evade tackles, and get touchdowns? I'm confused.
It's just funny. I mean, even his counterpart, Taj Washington out of USC, he was drafted pretty late too at receiver. It's kind of odd to think that, you can play with a Heisman caliber quarterback, but somehow the receivers aren't now like great or good enough to get drafted. It's really odd. Even because you look at last year, his top receiver last year, Jordan Addison, goes top 15 to the Minnesota Vikings. So why doesn't Brendan Rice get drafted as high? I think, to me, Brendan Rice was one of my top 8 receivers. There were a ton of receivers drafted this year, guys, especially even in the first round. There was just so many. You got Keon Coleman is the first pick of the second round. So it's so many good receivers this year. It's kind of weird to see that Brendan Rice was able to get washed and, not looked at as highly as a couple of these other guys. But to me, Brendan Rice, as a top 8 receiver, he should at least, at minimum, be drafted within the first 3 rounds. So for him to drop that far was very different to me. I think that he has all the tools to be a great wide receiver in the league. Going to the Chargers is a great spot for him. They need receivers. I'm sure everybody's seen the memes about Chargers receivers this past week. You lose Keenan Allen. Mike Williams isn't there anymore. You're missing a lot. And I kind of stuck with Quentin Johnston down there and Jalen Guy and a couple of young guys. But maybe Brendan Rice comes in there, takes that number 1 role, and really becomes the receiver that the Chargers want. You have a new coach down there in Harbaugh. He's been looking for his type of guys. I'm sure that, a coach coming from the collegiate ranks knows a lot about the collegiate players from the past year. So I think that Harbaugh looked at this as a chance to really strike on gold in the later rounds.
Let me ask this one last thing, Flicks, because people are going to be mad at this. They're going to be mad, especially our HBC folks. They'll be like, why are you still talking about this, man? But you got to ask this, because this is like really our last opportunity to really have a brief conversation about this. Let's say Dion really enjoyed the HBCU lane. He was like, no, Colorado, I'm staying at least for another year. And like Shedeur has 3 years at Jackson State. Let's say he stays all 4 years. And like Shedeur graduates. That's what everybody wanted. Everybody wanted Shedeur and Travis to graduate from HBCU, graduate from Jackson State. We were going to be like, see, that's why HBCU. We were going to say that, right? Do you think that like Shedeur and Travis would have been drafted had they stayed at Jackson State? You got Dion pushing them. Do you think they would have been drafted? Because people are saying that like betting odds, even though I hate when people base things off betting odds, I hate that with a passion. But a lot of folks think, based on betting, that they're going to be like top picks and Shedeur might be the number 1 pick. So like, do you think that maybe, not saying number 1 pick, but do you think that possibly Shedeur and Travis, maybe Shiloh, would have been drafted had Dion stayed at Jackson State and they stayed?
I think they would have been drafted for sure. It's probably a tweet I put out a couple of years ago. I've always felt like Shedeur Sanders would be the top quarterback prospect in whatever class it was. This class, no. But next year, definitely, I feel like he'll be the top quarterback prospect. I think that the only difference between him doing this at Colorado and Jackson State is probably 2 rounds, maybe. I think if he did this at Jackson State for the past 4 years, I think maybe he's a 2nd or 3rd round prospect, because at the end of the day, they're going to give him a knock for being at a HBCU, which is unfortunate, but it's pretty obvious and pretty blatant when you look at how these different HBCU guys are treated and drafted. When you look at a guy like Travis Hunter, maybe he could still stay 1st round if he's still at Jackson State. And I don't think that the talent level or anything changes just because he's at Jackson or Colorado. I think it's simply the view from the organizations, the NFL, and how they look at different players. I think that they judge those different Power 5 stats a little bit different, and they judge the Jackson State stats more on the curve. So even seeing more and more of the Jackson State stats, I think at the end of the day, if Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter stayed at Jackson State, or even Shiloh stayed at Jackson State, they'd break so many records that it would kind of be incalculable to go, whoa, why aren't they 1st round? Shedeur Sanders has thrown for 10,000 yards in 4 years. Travis Hunter has 10 interceptions and 10 touchdown passes. Like Shiloh has 4 forced fumbles and 3 picks. Like some certain things that you would have begun to see would have really shed the light on the reason why a lot of these HBCU prospects aren't drafted as high as they should be. I think it would really be more of a slap in the face to a lot of people and go, well, Shedeur was that good, but still was unable to capture the number 1 quarterback spot for this year's prospects. I think those type of things would have been coming into question because, simply put, people don't look at Jackson State. Well, not people. NFL organizations don't look at Jackson State's football program as highly as they look at Colorado's.
Yeah, and I think they should, because I mean Jackson State's had more success than Colorado's had, including this year. And people are gonna be, oh my God, Colorado fans are gonna find my address when I said that, because they were so mad at Yahoo Sports saying that for the 3rd year in a row, Colorado had no drafted players and they had Dion's face on it. And it's like, I mean, it's true. I mean, I get why you're mad, but it's true. I mean, I guess you can say Dion's gonna have like Shedeur and Travis and a couple others. Then Dion also had some undrafted guys. It's funny how perception works. Whereas like we're like, no HBCU players drafted. We're like, oh, what's wrong with the system? But then like Dion didn't have folks drafted. Someone puts out a graphic. Well, he had Jordan Weaver get signed, and it's like, it's just funny how perception works. We over here, our heads down like, when are HBCU players going to get their due? Colorado's like, no, let's fight. You're not going to say that about Coach Brown.
Right, neither one of us getting drafted. All right. That's the fight you want to have.
like they were ready to storm Yahoo Sports office. I swear to God. They was ready to go up there and call. They was going to make that. They was going to make whoever the social media editor that was delete that post. They was going to find out who it was that did it. I'm glad I was Clutch Sports, not with Yahoo Sports, boy. They would have been like, Randall Barnes did it.
Straight up.
That was great, but like last one. Okay, got to ask you this in the follow up: if Shedeur gets drafted number 1 overall, if Travis gets drafted 1st round, I feel like with Shiloh it's a little bit different because he graduated from Jackson State. But do we claim Shedeur and Travis? Because when we had the brother that went to the Ravens that never hit the field for North Carolina Central, and then he goes to UNC. Walker. Walker, he went to UNC and he had the thing going on where they wouldn't let him play. Tez Walker, because I was covering him with Clutch Ones. I don't know why his name escaped me, but he goes to UNC, has a pretty good run. He gets drafted by the Ravens, right? He gets drafted. So everybody was like, hey, well, that's one guy. He's an HBCU guy, but he never took the field from North Carolina Central. Then he transferred because it was COVID. He transferred before he even took the field. So people were claiming him. But you have Shador that played 2 years at Jackson State, and then he went to 2 Celebration Bowls with setting records. Then you have Travis Hunter that played 1 year, and you have Shiloh that also played 2 years, then graduated from Jackson State. So would it be wrong for us? I'm probably not going to do it on like the business side because like people will destroy me if I did that. But like, do you think that there's sort of behind closed doors with like those HBCU guys? You think would we be wrong with thinking that? Are those Colorado guys? We got our guys. What you think?
To me, they're 100% HBCU guys. You can't tell the story of Black college football in the past 10 years without these guys. You know, what HBCU football came up with out of COVID was much stronger than so many other programs. You know, coming out of COVID with a guy like Deion Sanders at the helm and a young quarterback in Shador Sanders who flips his commitment from all these other schools to go to Jackson State. That really was a moment in time. Being able to see all those top prospects go to Jackson State in a span of 2 to 3 months, guys like Nugget Warren, and it's just such a long list of guys that honestly chose Jackson State over Power 5 programs. I think there's no other way to tell the story without Shador Sanders and Shiloh Sanders and hearing about Travis Hunter leave Florida State and hear all the Florida State fans get pissed off at him and cuss him out and try to burn his jerseys, do the whole thing. But still, he still decides to go to Jackson State despite those things. I think that these two players were absolutely made in Jackson State. I don't think there's any other way to put it because at the end of the day, Colorado ain't that good. And this season at Colorado didn't change much for these players. It may have made them look a little bit different to some football players and some guys, but at the end of the day, they ended the season losing 8 games. No awards were made. No records were broken. Not much has changed for these guys in the past year. A lot of what they have now was built at Jackson, and they've been carrying it over from Jackson all the way now to here. So I really feel as though Shador Sanders, Travis, Shiloh, these guys, Shiloh graduated from Jackson State. So he is HBCU if I know HBCU. Travis and Shador Sanders are also HBCU. I think at the end of the day, if they stop playing today, their Jackson State days will always be remembered.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, I will say this. Now, Shador did set some records at that quarterback position at Colorado. Like, I would definitely say that. And he even said that the only real difference between HBCU football and, like, Power 5 FBS football is really the trenches. And that's the same thing Deion said. Like, you know, and I know he was at Jackson State when he said it. But Shador said that literally after they were winning. So, I mean, I believe the guy that had both experiences and then literally said, I threw for over 500 yards. I didn't do that in HBCU. And I'm like, yes, you sure didn't. Because you didn't do it against North Carolina Central and you didn't do it against South Carolina State. South Carolina State had, like, by Buddy Pugh knows something, boy. Tell me. But that first celebration, but Buddy Pugh knows something. But Shador is my guy. And I want to say also, Shalomar Sanders, who, of course, you know, is the youngest Sanders, going to Alabama A&M. So shout out to her with Don Thornton. I'm very excited. Very, very excited. I hope she stays. I'm very excited to cover her at Alabama A&M with Don Thornton. So I'm super excited about that. But we're gonna see what happens next year. Hopefully the Colorado fans don't attack us. Okay. But Flicks, great show, man. Listen, always glad to have you on to talk about HBCU football. Thank you for filling in for Ariel, all these different shows. She will be back really soon. I really appreciate you, Flicks. But before we go, tell everyone where they can find you on social media.
Cool, man. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kelly Flicks with 2 S's. I'm always on there talking football, and now that spring football is over, man, it's time to get into the next season. Guys are getting drafted. Things are moving, sticking and moving. So stay up to date with me, man. Kelly Flicks on Twitter and on Instagram. And also I'm on YouTube. Laceup Podcast Network. We'll be ramping things up now. Football season is full go. It's time for another season and really time for some spring previews. And I'm going to do some too early to tell rankings for HBCUs. It always blows up every year. So this year, we're going to do it in the next couple of weeks.
You better have Jackson State number 1 because they're going to be mad at you, boy. I swear to God. You better have Jackson State at number 1.
They're going to be upset about where North Carolina Central is, but I got to keep it real.
Oh, my God. Like, man, I would say Trey Oliver going to respond to you. Trey Oliver be on Twitter. Like, he got Twitter figures, man. He going, all right now. You go like man, listen, I'm thinking folks be wanting to smoke with me, man. When you had that graphic come,
all the smoke is coming my way. I already know.
Davis Richard gonna quote tweet you, and they put you on the board. They're gonna be like, look at what Flicks said.
Did it again, y'all. He put us at 7.
They gonna like if North Carolina Central wins the Celebration Bowl, they're gonna be like, they didn't believe in this whole time it was Flicks.
It's just me. I'm the only one.
And you got Joshko has something to say to you too. HBCU Nightly. He gonna have a whole space about you. Tell him like you.
Okay. Probably hop on a stick with him, man. It'll be fun though. It'll be fun. It's always fun time like this trying to predict stuff so far out. We're like 5 months out, still predicting, but so what?
Yeah, man, listen, I love it. You always got good stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on. But hey, listen, thank you so much for coming on, Flicks. All that you've been doing, man. Salute you, doing your thing, man. Super proud of you. You're listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to HBCUPulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.